You're in Africa, 500,000 years ago. It's around 3 a.m., pitch black, and something is breathing outside your shelter. Something big. You can't see it. You have no gun, no walls, no phone to call anyone. Just a stick, a rock, and a brain that is currently doing absolutely nothing useful. And somehow, you make it to morning. So how did a creature this weak, this slow, and this poorly equipped actually survive? This is what we are about to uncover. Stick around and subscribe to The Buried Layer so you never miss what's buried next. To understand how our ancestors survived, you first need to understand what they were surviving against. The predators of the Pleistocene, that is, the geological period stretching from roughly 2.5 million years ago to about 12,000 years ago, were not like anything alive today. They were bigger, faster, and more specialized than almost every large carnivore that currently walks the earth. Take Smilodon fatalis. Most people picture a saber-toothed tiger, but researchers prefer the term saber-toothed cat because it was not closely related to modern tigers at all. Smilodon had canine teeth, the long pointed front teeth that could reach up to 28 centimeters in length. That is roughly the length of a human forearm. Paleontologist Per Christensen at the Natural History Museum of Denmark published research showing that Smilodon had forelimbs that were extraordinarily muscular, built for pinning and holding large prey rather than chasing it at speed. This animal did not need to outrun you. It needed to get close once, and then it was over. Then there was the American lion, Panthera atrox, which roamed North America until around 11,000 years ago. It was approximately 25% larger than the African lion alive today. Researcher Brian Switek, writing in the journal Paleontologia Electronica, described the American lion as one of the most formidable ambush predators the continent had ever seen. In Africa, where our earliest ancestors evolved, the threats were equally severe. Dinofelis, the creature mentioned at the beginning of this story, was not the only danger. There were also giant hyenas, Pachycrocuta, Revirostris, animals with jaws powerful enough to crush the thigh bone of a hippopotamus. There were enormous crocodiles, larger than any alive today. There were short-faced bears in the Americas that stood nearly 2 meters at the shoulder when on all fours. And our ancestors? The early species of the genus Homo, the biological group that includes modern humans, were small. Homo habilis, living around 2 million years ago, stood roughly 1 meter 20 centimeters tall. They had no claws, no armor, no venom, no real speed. By any measure of raw biology, they had no business surviving. But here's where it gets unsettling. The fossil evidence does not just suggest that early humans were sometimes eaten by predators. It suggests they were regularly, systematically hunted. Researchers C.K. Brain, working in South Africa through the 1960s and 70s, spent years analyzing bones found in cave sites at Swartkrans and Sterkfontein. His findings, published in his landmark 1981 book The Hunters, or The Hunted, documented something remarkable. The bones of early hominins, that is, members of the human family line, were found alongside the bones of baboons and other prey animals, all in patterns consistent with predator accumulation. In other words, something was dragging human ancestors back to dens and eating them there. Brain identified Dinofelis as a likely culprit based on the puncture patterns in the skulls. The holes matched the spacing of Dinofelis' canine teeth almost exactly. Our ancestors were not occasionally caught by predators. They were something's preferred meal. Researchers Lee Berger and Ron Clark later added further evidence. Working in South African cave sites through the 1990s, they found additional hominin skull fragments with predator damage consistent with large cats and raptors, specifically large eagles. The crowned eagle alive today in Africa is known to prey on monkeys and small children. In the past, much larger eagle species likely targeted early human children regularly. We were food. That is not a poetic statement. That is what the physical evidence shows. The answer is almost certainly not one thing. Researchers today believe it was a combination of biological changes and behavioral strategies that shifted our ancestors from prey to something far more dangerous. The first factor was fire. The control of fire by early humans remains one of the most debated topics in paleoanthropology, the study of ancient human ancestors. Researcher Richard Wrangham of Harvard University proposed in his 2009 book, Catching Fire, How Cooking Made Us Human, that fire use may go back nearly 2 million years. Though the oldest widely accepted evidence of controlled fire use comes from a site called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dated to around 1 million years ago by researcher Francesco Berna and his colleagues in a 2012 paper published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Fire changed everything. Predators fear fire. A group of small, slow hominins gathered around a flame at the mouth of a cave was suddenly protected by something no large cat or hyena could easily overcome. The second factor was collective defense. Primatologist Robin Dunbar of the University of Oxford has argued extensively that early human group behavior, cooperation, communication, shared awareness of threats was the central adaptation that allowed survival. Groups that warned each other, that stood together, that drove predators away through coordinated noise and movement, survived. Those that scattered did not. Over millions of years, the ones who cooperated left more descendants. The third factor was cognitive flexibility, the ability to think in new ways, to plan, to use tools. Even early stone tools, called Oldowan tools by researchers after the Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, where they were first studied, gave early humans something profound: the ability to process animal carcasses faster than any scavenger. This allowed access to high-protein food sources that fueled brain growth. As brains grew, problem-solving improved. And as problem-solving improved, survival against predators became more and more possible. But here's where it gets unsettling again. Even with fire, even with cooperation, even with growing intelligence, the pressure of predation never fully stopped. It shaped us. The deep, unreasoning fear of darkness that many people feel today, as researchers believe, this is a direct psychological inheritance from millions of years of being hunted at night. The way humans instinctively scan open spaces before crossing them. The way children fear being alone. These are not irrational quirks. They are ancient survival programs, written into the human nervous system by predators that no longer exist. Researcher Arne Öhman of the Karolinska Institute in Sweden spent decades studying human fear responses. His research showed that humans detect images of snakes and spiders far faster than images of modern threats like guns or electrical sockets. The brain was not built for the modern world. It was built for the Pleistocene. It was built for a world full of things that wanted to eat us. Here is the conclusion that most people stop short of drawing, and it matters deeply. We are not the default masters of this planet. We are survivors of something that should have ended us. Every human being alive today exists because, at some point in the last 2 million years, a very small group of frightened, fragile creatures managed to not get eaten on a particular night. They huddled together. They kept the fire burning. They screamed at the darkness together. And something in that desperate cooperation lit a spark that eventually became language, art, cities, science, and every other thing we call civilization. The traits that saved us, cooperation, communication, the willingness to stand together against something far more powerful than any individual, were not chosen by us. They were chosen for us by predators. Dinofelis and Smilodon and Pachycrocida and all the other creatures that hunted our ancestors were, in a brutal and unintentional way, the architects of human society. Every time a predator killed the individuals who ran alone, or refused to share information, or failed to contribute to group defense, it selected for the ones who did the opposite. Over millions of years, that selection pressure built the animal that would eventually build everything else. This means that loneliness is not just painful. For most of human history, it was fatal. Our need for community is not a weakness or a social preference. It is the core survival technology that allowed our entire species to exist. The anxiety you feel when you are isolated from people you trust is your nervous system running a 2-million-year-old program, one that once meant the difference between living until morning and becoming something's next meal. We survived because we needed each other, and in every way that matters, that is still true.